Wouldn't want that, would we?
Okay, ready?
Honestly.
Alright. Did you say honestly? I don't know. So, someone tell me what the prompt is for your time right.
Analyze how Dillard's language reveals her developing understanding of time in the chapter.
Okay, so if we were going to put something into the method column from 9, I did methods because it's on the left-hand side of the page, right? Method column, what would we put from the prompt into the method column? Language. That's big, right? What would we put into the meaning, purpose, or effect column?
Understanding of time.
Developing.
You left a word out.
Developing.
Developing understanding of time. If you leave out a discussion of development, then you are not talking about how her language shows change. That's the whole point of this. How do her words, her sentences, her images, her details, her organization reveal her thinking? How do they make you think so that she gets to the big idea? Does that make sense? Are you with me? You're going to have to nod or shake your head because I need feedback at this point, okay? So what we're talking about when we talk about language is anything from the bottom half of the framework, right? We're talking about word choice, we're talking about sentence structure, we're talking about imagery, we're talking about what she includes, what she leaves out, what she repeats, all of that. And how all of that comes together to show that she begins the chapter with one way of thinking and ends the chapter with a whole different way of thinking. Right? If you don't talk about change, you're not talking about the prompt. Alright? So how does language reveal change? That's what we're going to do together. You with me? Somebody read me the very first sentence, and I want to hear, because 4th hour did great. They were like, yeah, I got this, and and somebody spoke up and identified what was going on in that first sentence. Somebody read the first sentence.
Yesterday I set out to catch the new season, and instead I found an old snake skin.
Okay. Can we talk about the structure of that sentence for just a second? What kind of sentence is it? Compound. Is it parallel?
I think so, but I can't name it.
Well, it's just parallel.
Okay.
So it's a compound parallel sentence. Right? So what? So what?
It's putting the ideas on equal footing.
Which ideas on equal footing?
Catching the new season and finding an old snakeskin.
That's right. And especially putting new season, old snakeskin.
Yeah.
How in the world do you put those two ideas on an equal plane? That's what Dillard's syntax does. Her sentence structure, and y'all don't refer to it as syntax, call it what it is. Her parallel compound sentence. Don't say her syntax. If you use this word, you're talking about a lot of things. You're talking about 4 different kinds of sentences, and multiple kinds of repetition, and multiple kinds of omission, and all sorts of funny Greek words, right? But if you say parallel compound sentence, you are characterizing the syntax. Does that make sense? Okay. Don't use just this word. It's not powerful. So what our sentence does is it introduces an unlikely comparison. That parallel compound sentence in some way sets equally the new season and the old snakeskin. There's also something striking about the first independent clause. Read just the first independent clause to me.
Yesterday I set out to catch the new season.
Yesterday I set out to catch the new season. Tell me what kinds of things you catch.
Physical objects. Moving.
Physical objects. Balls. Moving things. Butterflies.
Oh, later she talks about a net.
She talks about a net. Fish. Can you catch a season? Can you catch a new season? Can you trap it? Can you confine it? Can you pinpoint it? No. What does her word choice show us about her initial understanding of time?
It's childish, immature.
It's childish. That's a good word. Why is it childish?
Because it's kind of like, it has like this idealistic time, and I'm gonna catch the new season, and it's putting something that you can't catch into like this little mold, when it's really a big idea.
That's right.
It's
She's
really
imposing
there.
limits on something that really doesn't have limits. That's exactly right. And all of that from one word, guys. One word. Right? And then she says, and instead. 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 Contrast. What happened? Did she accomplish what she set out to do?
No.
What's that saying? Men make plans and... I've never heard that.
No.
Men make plans and God laughs. You ever heard that?
No.
No? I don't know if it's true though, right? Well, I might remember this. Okay, so, we got the first sentence? So, Annie Dillard, I'll just give you some language, right? Annie Dillard begins the chapter by establishing her current mindset, or her initial mindset about time. That it is something that can be caught. That it is something that has a clear beginning, middle, and end. It is something that can be defined. But immediately, she contrasts her expectation with her reality, which is that she set out to do this idealized thing, and instead she found something unexpected. Now, why does that matter? I found an old snakeskin. Why does the snakeskin matter?
Because the snake says, she uses it as a symbol for time, a metaphor for time, later on.
Yes, kind of.
But
She
now
does.
it's
Right now, but we don't know that
yeah,
yet, right?
but now it's just kind of something that we're looking for now.
Something that she causes the reader to investigate. Are you looking for why these two things are alike? Should be. That's what she's trying to do. She's trying to create this sense of comparison that causes you to question.
And then it's
Right.
like an interesting scene in a certain central evidence.
So this whole next paragraph sort of sets the stage, right? She what does she do? What does she do? Pick a word. What does she do? Can you see it on the screen? Huh?
Describes.
She describes. How do we describe? What do we use? Detail. And
Figurative language.
does she use figurative language? Not really.
Well, I mean, like the lightest, and
One simile.
The crime scene, one simile. So would you call that characterizing? Like, does the figurative language characterize that section? Is that a defining characteristic? No, it's really more the imagery, right? It's the visual imagery, and even the tactile imagery, right? She talks about what it feels like, what it looks like, what the scene looks like, right? So she describes this thing. Now, this doesn't show us anything about her understanding of time, right? It sort of puts us in the present, right? Puts her.
Sets it up for the rest of the story about the snakes.
That's exactly right. She has to begin with the concrete thing that she found. She has to begin with the thing that she actually did get, the thing that she actually did catch, which is the snake skin. Now, she starts off with a really wide description, right? It's 5 feet long, it's probably not a poisonous snake. She reveals a little bit about her knowledge of nature, right? And then, on the next page, she zooms in. What does she zoom into, Marlene? What does she zoom into?
The way it's set up,
The way it's set up. And
like, it looks like the snake just bursts out of the area.
okay, next page, so turn page. Top of the next page.
The seasons,
Okay, just go back a page, I'm sorry, 74. I should pay attention better. She zooms in. The point I want to make about
The knot.
snake skin.
the knot.
The knot. Was it really about the big scene?
No.
No, she just really sort of gives you that, right? She, if I had planned ahead, I would have had this untied a little better, but I don't untie.
Huh?
It's so poetic. So anyway, Alright, so she zooms into the knot. Now get a highlighter, if you didn't already do this. I want you to highlight every reference, every use of a word that relates to knot. Untie, untying, knot. Did you already do that? Good girl. Good boy. Way to go. Eva nodded first. She nodded. I was affirming. Why does good girl sound okay, but good boy sounds so weird?
It sounded like a dog.
Is that what it is?
I said that to my dog.
Good boy.
Like, I think it was okay when I said it to you, but it came out of my mouth and I was like, the good boy came out and I was like, that didn't sound good. It sounded demeaning. So anyway, good job, young man.
Good job, Jack.
Noble squire.
Just in that paragraph?
Just, no, actually, that whole page. Let me give you a hint. There's 9. 9. I said that real country-like. There are 9 places where she uses his references.
I have 11.
You did? Okay, tell me. I missed something.
Um,
Not loop. You didn't use loop, right?
No, I just did untie and knot.
Okay. Tied in a knot. Tied themselves in a knot. Tied in a knot.
Could have.
Throw
Tied
themselves
it
into
on.
a half hitch.
Yeah,
Half hitch.
Oh, you used half hitch? Okay. Okay. I ignored that because I was I was more focused on the knot that she was looking at and not the knot and knot. The actual snake skin. Now where did I see could have?
Wait, so like in the beginning, tied in a knot. This is one.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And then tied themselves in a knot. Oh, you're separating them
Yeah.
into tied and knot? Okay, yeah, that's one. So I have tied in a knot, tied themselves in a knot, tied it in a knot, it's knot. The knot had no beginning. The knot's lump. Untie it, untie a donut, looking exactly like a knot. That's what I have.
Oh, searching for a place to
Half
untie.
hitch. Huh?
In the second sentence of the second paragraph, it's searching for a
Oh,
place to
untie. Look at there. Golly. Good job. Thank you. You know, I underlined that in pencil. So there's 10. There are 10. And then I just highlight that in blue and everything else is in green. Oh, my.
The last word on the page is not.
Uh-huh.
Okay. I got 11. Oh, close enough.
I got 8.
Okay. Regardless.
Yeah.
Regardless. If it's anywhere between 8 and 11, that's a lot for 2 paragraphs. How many times in 2 paragraphs can you say the same thing? Apparently at least 8 or 11. Right? Or 9. Or I got 10. I'm not sure. Why do we repeat ourselves when we are talking to ourselves?
Because we have to keep thinking about it.
Why? Why do we have to? Why? We're repeating it to keep reiterating it in our brain. Why is that necessary?
Because it's part of analyzing something.
Is it?
Yeah. Because
Or does it show the lack of analysis?
well, I don't know about other people, but when I start repeating something over and over again, it's because I'm narrowing in or I go deeper and then I go out, then go deeper, then go out.
But you're not repeating the same idea. You're not reasserting the same point, are you? Or is it changing shape every time?
Yeah, it's kind of changing.
Is hers changing shape every time she uses it? She has an epiphany.
Yeah.
She does have an epiphany, but the majority of the time she says it, it's defining this thing. The repetition defines. The repetition, syntax, defines her understanding. Now, tell me why, this is a snake. Not really. It's an analogy. I know you're shocked. Okay. This is a knot, yes? This is the kind of knot that it tied itself into. Right? What about a knot? talking about this knot?
It has a beginning and an end.
It has a beginning and an end. Is it infinite? Can it be pinpointed?
Yes.
Can it be undone? Yes. Does it have limitations? Yes. What is that characterization of that thing, that repeated, unyielding characterization of that thing in that snakeskin tell you about Annie Dillard's thinking?
Concrete.
That she's imposing on nature.
That the seasons have a beginning and an end.
Okay, well, let's not jump straight to that point yet. Let's get there. Can we get there? Hold that, and let's get there from here. The fact that she repeats knot, untie, 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 knot, is telling you
She,
She thinks it's concrete and can be defined and can be undone.
yeah.
she thinks that it can be defined, that it is concrete. Now, what she's doing is revealing to you this frame of reference, this box that she's trying to look at everything through. You ever have those ideas in conversation that just keep coming up with multiple people and you're like, why does this keep coming back to this big idea? Do y'all ever have that experience? Where it's like it keeps coming back to this, like, why do we keep winding up talking about this? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes.
Keep having conversations about frames of reference with people. And I'm realizing this about myself too, because Tatum is like a miniature version of me. She looks like her father, but she maddeningly acts like me when I was a child, and it's the most annoying thing ever. Because there's absolutely nothing I can do to get through to her, nothing. Because she's in this box, right? And I have this crazy way, and I don't know, you may be surprised by this one, maybe not. This very, like, defined way of looking at things. I do. When I process things. And if it doesn't fit into my box, I get very bothered. And I say, that just doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense. It's a knot, it's a knot, it's a knot, it's a knot. And it doesn't matter how many times somebody says, it can't be a knot, it can't be a knot, it can't be a knot. I'm like, but it's a knot. Because that's what fit in my box. If it doesn't fit in my box, I have to change my box. That's bothersome, right? Because I want to understand things like this. I want to put limits, right?
Cognitive dissonance.
Even though I know it doesn't make sense, I'm going to continue to try to make it make sense. Right? Cognitive dissonance. Anybody read Last My Teacher Told Me? James Levin? He talks about that a lot in that book. It's a good book. Good book. Very long book. Huh? Lies My Teacher Told Me? Oh, cognitive dissonance.
Now you probably tell that.
Yeah.
Lies.
Cognitive, COGNITIVE, cognitive dissonance,
It's almost
DISSONANCE.
back.
It's when we continue to force ourselves to think of things in a certain way, even though we know logically it can't work like that.
So you're just saying like all of the concrete she thinks are the seasons, or is that?
Well, right now we're just on the snakeskin, but let's talk about what the way of her thinking about that knot, the knot, what that reveals about her generalized thinking about nature, which would include time, which would include identifying the change of the seasons as something that can't be caught. Isn't that what she's essentially doing, is putting limitations and boundaries and edges? Like there are edges to grasp in a season? Like there are edges, ostensibly, that I could grasp in this knot untied, which I can't. There we go. Now it's untied. You can't do that. You can't, well, we'll get to that in just a second. Okay? So what is her thinking about the snakeskin revealed by her initial understanding of time?
She classified it. She broke it up.
She classifies it
Yeah.
into
The seasons.
the seasons, which are manageable chunks that we've defined, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we even have a first day of spring, don't we? First day of winter, December 21st. It might be 75 degrees outside, but oh no, it's winter, right? We could have a snowstorm in May that's going to be just about summer. That's because that's what we define, right? Okay. So, are you with me? Now, go to the next page at the top, or paragraph. Read it real quick. Not hour, sorry, rather. Hopefully you mark some things in it. It begins with a one-word sentence, not good syntax. One-word sentence. So, period. What does so reveal? What does so show me or try to indicate?
Causal analysis.
There we go, beautiful. With causal analysis, you have a cause, a so, a then, a thus, and then an effect, right? And typically speaking, so is predicated on the cause. The cause comes first, not vice versa, right? Right? So she says all of that over there about the snake skin. It's a knot, 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 until she has the epiphany that, oh, it's not a knot, right? She has that epiphany. And suddenly I realized, suddenly it occurred to me. It occurred to me.
What form do knot-like thing? How did the knot-like thing form?
The knot-like thing form? Well, that's what she couldn't figure out. That's why. Oh, you mean like how did the actual thing form? I don't know. Like it's
She
really
doesn't
hard to
know
sort
either.
of picture. It basically, what she realizes is as the snake was coming out of the skin, it sort of doubled back on itself. The skin did, like it got sort of rumpled, right?
Like it rolled
And
from the
it
inside.
looked like a knot. It wasn't a knot. It just, and again, think about it. This is so human nature, right? If it looks like a skunk, it's got to be a skunk, right? If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. Whether or not it is a duck, we have put that label on it because that is so our nature, right? I'm going to process it in my box. If it looks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, it's a duck. If it looks like a knot, it's got to be a knot. It can't be any other thing. When all of a sudden she realizes it's illogical, it can't be a knot. And then that's when her looking at it changes. That's when her vision changes. It stops looking like a knot. Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then it got.
Gotta hold that up. Yeah. Okay. Y'all see that? It sort of looks like a knot. Because and actually,
Yes, my.
it rolls back like it. I don't take too much time. But yeah, that's what it does. It comes back on
And then
itself and it
like
comes back out.
crackly and
Mm-hmm. And I can't do it because it needs to be like a tube to work, but anyway, yes. So, but anyway, her understanding evolves once she has this epiphany that is brought on by realizing that this is not logical for me to conclude this. So, all of that epiphany about what she was trying to force onto nature, so, period. And what's the next thing she says?
I've been thinking about the change of the seasons.
I have been thinking about the change of the seasons. I have been thinking. How does your understanding develop? How does your understanding develop? By thinking about something. So the cause and effect structure reveals that the encounter that Dillard has with the snake skin is what motivates her to develop her understanding of the change of seasons and also time. Does that make sense? It's not necessarily the syntax there. Here is the order in which things are occurring. Does that make sense? Do you see why it's so hard to really, for something like this, the development of something, to write about her diction, her word, her syntax, her this? Do you see how artificial that is to divide it into, like, as if you could divide it into diction, syntax, figurative language? Why our 3-paragraph structure doesn't work? Because that's not what reveals the development. The development occurs slowly throughout the piece. You have to talk about this piece chronologically, because that's how development occurs. Development occurs slowly throughout the chapter, and it's revealed to you by the words, the sentence structure, the imagery, and the changing language. Does that make sense? Okay. So, now, I love this chapter. I love this part. I love this chapter too. All right. Now, take a look at what she does. Remembering what she said first. I set out to catch, right? So I've been thinking about the change of seasons. I don't want to miss spring this year. I don't want to miss spring this year. Miss. What does miss imply?
That's the beginning and end. It's something
That she doesn't want to miss it. But that implies that she can catch it. Right? Is she there? Has she figured it out? No, this word choice shows us she's still thinking about catching it. Because if you can miss it, then that means you can catch it. Yes?
I was looking at this the wrong way.
That you can catch it, is that what you're saying?
Right, because if you were able to miss something, then that implies that the alternative would be to catch it. Yes? Okay. I want to distinguish, and this is what she's characterizing with her images. Characterizing with her images her understanding of what missing spring would entail. I want to distinguish the last winter frost from the out-of-season one, the frost of spring. Is there a difference in frost? Can you do that? Do you understand what she's doing? I want to be there on the spot, the moment the grass turns green. Do you understand the improbability of that image? Does grass turn green?
Slowly.
It doesn't turn green. It grows in. Grass doesn't turn green. We use that expression. We say grass turns green, right? We say grass turns green. Does grass turn green? No. Green grass grows in and replaces the old dead grass. Can you be there on the moment grass grows in? That's like being there on the moment that you leave your childhood behind. When did that happen? Right? It's like your parents look at you and say, when did you grow up? Like, how did you get so old? Because you didn't all of a sudden turn into something. Right? You developed. You grew. So the limitations, the grass turns green, the improbability of the imagery shows you the limitations of her thinking. Still, right? Does that make sense? The improbability of the imagery.
Did she contemplate all this and then come back and write the chapter, or as she's writing a chapter?
No, as she's writing a chapter.
Okay.
In the same way that a very talented quarterback can read 1,000,000 signs on a football field and still be able to make a play. In the same way that a surgeon knows exactly what to do to head off disaster without analyzing every detail. In the same way that a police officer with lots of experience can read a situation and know who's dangerous and who's not. Does that make sense? There's actually, our next unit is going to be a unit on mind, brain, and education. We're going to read about the brain, we're going to read about education, we're going to read about IQ, and we're going to talk about memory, because I've been reading all this stuff about this, and you guys seem like you're sort of interested about it, so we're going to read about it. We're going to read a piece by Wandi about surgery, we're going to read a piece from Me Walking with Einstein, we're going to read a chapter from Malcolm Gladwell that talks about why Asians are so good at math. He's got a whole chapter on it, right? So we're going to read about that, and we're going to talk about the brain. So, because when you become an expert at something, it is natural. It comes from like multiple input sources that you just like get. Does that make sense? Gifted writers just know what's going to work. You know what? And you manipulate language masterfully too, because you read a situation with your parents, and you know exactly what to say, exactly when to say it, and exactly how to say it to get your desired outcome. Yes? Same thing. It's not any different. You're just tailoring it to a very narrow audience. You might want to delete that part of the video. Don't want to see that. Okay. All right. I always miss. I always miss this radical revolution. She's repeated miss, right? Twice. I see it the next day. The next day? Like spring just happened yesterday, and now we're in spring? The next day? From a window. The yard so suddenly. You see all that diction? Green and lush, I could envy Nebuchadnezzar down on all fours eating grass. That's Old Testament. If you want to look up the biblical allusions in this chapter to add some depth to your analysis, please do so, okay? This year, I want to stick a net into time. I want to stick a net into time. What do you stick nets into?
Water.
To do what?
Catfish.
You want to stick a net into time. Is there a pattern in the improbability of her imagery in this paragraph which reveals her limited understanding of time? Yes, there is. There is a pattern in the improbability of her imagery which reveals her limited understanding of time. She's not there yet. Right? But, what is this? But, what's but? I want to, but. Contrast, what's she contrasting?
Her previous thought pattern to her post-revision thought pattern.
Right. Her expectation
To reality.
versus reality. Is this the moment in which she shows, I want to do all these really improbable things, but it occurred to me. Is that the same time? Same thing? It occurred to me. Does she use that same language?
But it occurred to me that I couldn't do all.
Then, of course, I reasoned what had happened. I reasoned it occurred to me. It occurred to me that I could no more catch spring by the tip of the tail than I could untie the apparent knot in the snakeskin. That's an analogy. The change of seasons is to time as the knot is to the snakeskin. It's not possible to define. It's not possible. And it reveals a misunderstanding, a fundamental misunderstanding. Her way of thinking about the apparent knot, apparent means seeming. It doesn't mean obvious. Apparent means it appears to be. The root of that word is appear, which means seems, right? The apparent knot in the snakeskin. I'm sorry, I gotta back up. Her misconceptions about the apparent knot in the snakeskin is analogous to her misunderstanding of seasons and time. Do you hear me giving you commentary? Do you hear that? That doesn't mean you go through and you write all these things down and you memorize them so you can put them on the essay tomorrow. I'm modeling for you, okay? Alright?
Go back.
Yeah, exactly. Just do a transcription of the video. No. Be like, these are all nines. I sound so good. Alright. There are no edges to grasp. There are no edges on seasons. You can't make it concrete. There's her awareness. There's her understanding. That's it right there. You see it? It's in the analogy. That's where the realization is revealed. That's where the development is happening. Yeah? Okay. Both are continuous loops. What are continuous loops?
Time.
Circles
Don't have a meaning.
don't have a beginning or end. Well, what are the both?
Time.
Time
And the knot.
and the knot.
Different.
Where does this ring stop? Where does it start? Why do you think that's a symbol for marriage?
Forever.
Forever. Yes. I got an awe out of fourth period when I said that. You guys are so well illustrated.
I was thinking all
But it's true, right?
that.
The circle of life, right? Remember Cooper? Circle of life. Don't go into the circle of life. Right? Okay. So, she goes on, and how many of you, what was your reaction to this next paragraph? I wonder how long it would take you to notice the regular recurrence of the seasons if you were the first man on earth.
It kind of threw for a loop, like, I guess there is no real seasons.
Right. Well, when would you realize that there was an actual cycle?
Or a pattern.
Like, it's cold, it's really cold. Why is it so cold? Why is it so cold? You wouldn't know that the cold is going to stop. It's hot. Man, it's so hot. Man, it's so hot. What are you saying right about August 13th?
I wish.
Man, I'm so ready for fall. Right? Winter, I'm so ready for the spring. Spring, I'm so ready for the summer. Because you know it's coming. What if you're the first man on earth?
Yeah.
Would you know?
Not if you had a winter like this one.
I think it kind of this like inductive reasoning. Like,
But how many cycles do you have to go through before you figure out that there is indeed a cycle? And what happens when you have irregularities? You're just starting to figure it out and all of a sudden it snows in May.
yeah.
Or you have
Right?
like 2 cold days
What
in
does that
January.
tell you exactly? Well, you actually have like one day of cold weather and then it goes back up to 70
But you don't have
degrees.
January, you don't have
As in the case of this week.
Yeah.
40 degrees and raining all day Monday, 70 degrees today, balmy. Okay.
What is this?
All right.
Falling
But
from
then there's like a torrential downpour coming eventually, I'm not sure when. Okay? So, what does that tell you about the limitations of man's understanding versus the divine? Why does she quote Genesis?
Because that's the first man.
So, and I said in fourth hour, why did they decide to put that? I said, no, why did God decide to put that quote in Genesis? That's what I said. So anyhow, why is that quote in Genesis? Why is that something that has to be in the very first book?
So they don't freak out.
Exactly. Exactly. Because we need reassurance because our limited understanding is so scary.
Stop spazzing out, little people. Don't
That's right. It's
It's
gonna come
fine.
back. It'll be all right. That's exactly it. Right? So why does she choose to include that quote? What does that show you about her understanding of her own limitations?
They need reassurance.
Yeah. That I'm not going to make sense of it by myself, am I? All right. So then, now, I know you can't write about this entire chapter. So if it's okay, I'm going to sort of fast forward you to, and I say the entire chapter, every single paragraph in the chapter. If it were me, from that, I would move from that point to the last 2 paragraphs of the chapter, which begin on page 77. Now, is there anything before that that you'd like to discuss? That you saw, that you think bears inclusion? Because that doesn't mean you can't write about it. I'm just saying if it's overwhelming you. Okay, questions? Yes.
When she's taking her 16 back home, she talks about how she keeps like bumping it on things and looking at it and stuff. Is that symbolic of anything?
Well, the fragility, I suppose. That it's not eternal. Again, that anything that we pick up, anything we understand can be, it's going to dissolve, it's going to go away. Jason, a question? Then
Well, she was talking about how, like, it says we still very much stress the simple fact. And it's like, why do we have to stress something so simple if it's so simple? Like, that it has to be stressed. Like, we can't grasp something so simple.
Because we want to put limitations on it because we're trying to make it fit in our body.
Do we stress it for the benefit of the children, or do we stress it for the benefit of ourselves? Because we like to oversimplify things, right?
And what is the simple fact of the seasons anyway? That's
It's not really a simple fact. We try to make it a simple fact. We try to oversimplify it for children.
4 seasons, and it snows in May. Like someone from like an Eskimo tribe living off away from people would be like shocked to find multiple seasons.
Right, exactly. People who live in the tropics,
Only
Yeah.
2 seasons.
you know,
Oh,
where there's really no season in the tropics.
I thought there was 2, rainy and not rainy.
Yeah, I guess that's a monsoon. Monsoon. Just like I heard, there's a
Living
comedian
on a
that said there were
raft.
4 seasons in California: fire, what is it? Wind, rain, fire, and something else. Avalanche. That's what it is. Yeah, like there's always something.
right. Like in the story of the snake skin, she doesn't use chronological order. First she does like the setting, and she says the snake skin. And then she's saying it's in her kitchen, and she broke it, and then she moves on,
Yeah.
dragging it around, and then she's back in her house thinking about the knot. Could that be part of her confusion going time?
The fragmentation of the order. That's brilliant. Yes. That's awesome. Never thought about that. Love it. Love it. All right, last 2 paragraphs. Tell me about the imagery.
We
Tell me about the figurative language. Why does she go figurative? She hasn't been that figurative, has she?
Because she can't put definition on them with normal terms.
So
It has
we
to
use
be metaphor.
figurative language to talk about metaphysical things, abstract things. You can't talk about it in concrete terms. Bro, I just scared out of something. She's so
Yeah,
scared.
they're like,
Don't take that
"Who's
class."
that former teacher of yours?"
Okay. Sometimes figurative language is the only thing that works when you're talking about the metaphysical.
This is tomorrow. That's all for today.
Tomorrow, I will put it up on the meme.
She's the birth.
The meme.
Okay, this,
Like off of
there's so much alliteration.